A lovely morning to you, and thank you so much for being with us. Welcome back from Rob Walker, the man who knows Uganda so very well. No wonder he has been here for about 3 times, but it is really a very interesting one, knowing that there are people who have Uganda at heart, and of course him being here with us. Now, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra, which is an extension of Good Morning Uganda. I'm Robert Chirabo Nyonyitono. And I equally come with another very interesting topic for Ugandans. I want to emphasize for Ugandans. Now, today, we are going to be discussing oil, but not the usual discussions we've had regarding oil. When is it going to come out? When are we going to see our first oil? This is 2025, where we expect that. We've not come here for agreements. Today there's this signing, the other there's the signing, that all processes have been done to ensure that oil is a blessing to Ugandans and not a curse. So never get tired of step by step that you are today signing this, tomorrow they are signing this, now final agreement, now drilling. These all are being carried out by the government of Uganda to ensure that we benefit from this oil, to ensure that we leave no stone unturned, and indeed our oil becomes a blessing, because we've seen countries that have had oil and oil became a curse. For Uganda, we can say it could seem slow, but very sure and definitely to bring us the yields that we need. Now, today we are going to be discussing something very important. That is a national or government take in the oil and gas sector. National or government take in the oil and gas sector. Now, what does this mean? This means that, yes, you're going to have a number of companies, a number of investments being done in the oil sector, and we know it's a huge investment that government alone cannot do. So what this means is, how do we ensure a term that has now become very common for people in the oil sector, that is called local content? How do we ensure that Achirabo Robert can benefit from this oil process, not only waiting from the revenue collected, that got all that, but if there are opportunities, Robert can be one of the people to benefit through that. Now, this morning, I have a very interesting person. Why? He's a young lad, and he's in the oil sector. He happens to be one of the local contractors in the oil sector, and he runs a company known as Rohi Investment Limited, which is a local oil and gas contractor, and that is Job Kahigwa. Job Kahigwa, and he's a very interesting person. At least I've had some discussions with him, and very optimistic that this is the long-awaited for dream that is going to see us in that promised land. You're most welcome.
Thank you, Robert. It's like as if you've talked about everything in oil.
I could be having some few things here and there,
okay.
Definitely regarding the oil, because it's been around.
For a while.
And of course, every Ugandan, you must interest yourself in this.
Absolutely.
You must interest yourself.
Absolutely.
Now, Job, how have you been?
I've been well. Thank you for inviting me here. Quite a pleasure for me to be here and talk about a topic that I'm very passionate about, which is oil and gas. So thank you.
Now, let's begin by breaking down this concept to our viewers. You're a young man. You're an investor. Actually, you're a local contractor. But the term a national government take in the oil sector, this entire concept, what are we referring to?
Okay, Robert, the concept of government take or national take actually comes from the oil and gas concessionary PSA regime. These are special oil and gas contractual framework. A PSA is a production sharing agreement, and other countries use concessionaries. Now, a PSA, special as I have mentioned, stipulates what government and what oil companies, commonly known as IOCs, international oil companies, will take from the oil and gas resource. Now, this is a very, very special arrangement. It is not used in other sectors of business or economic sectors. So within that PSA, there is an agreement that government will take this and oil companies will take that. Now, in the concept of government or national take or host government take, referring to Uganda, our PSA provides for a signature bonus meaning that at the time of signing a PSA, production sharing agreement, which is an agreement that marries government with oil companies, in this case we can refer to CNOOC and Total, a signature bonus is paid. Now that is already government take. But when this oil is produced out of the ground, government has a share and oil companies have a share. Now that share that is taken by oil companies, CNOOC and Total, and a tax is paid because they are going to sell it. So when they are selling that oil as a share of oil companies from the reserve or from the extraction of oil, government again receives taxes. But also government has a share. Now that share of government is what will go to the refinery, and an excess or excess of it can be sold on the international market. So we can get revenue from the excess oil sold on the international market through the ECO pipeline, but we also will have the benefits that are associated with using our oil or Ugandan oil for refinery to refine and get refined products. So already we've seen a signature bonus, we've seen the taxation of the oil company's share of oil, we've also seen the share of government take that goes to refinery and the other benefits that comes with it. But along the way, we have also the concept of local content, and now that is also a benefit to the government. Now, ordinarily, local content is really shared value. Local content is value retention, and local content is sustainability. Now, what we are saying is that over and above the tech that comes from the fiscal regime that is within the PSA that we've signed here, the taxation and so on, we also are saying that what the oil companies are putting in the development and production of this oil should be retained, part of it should be retained for sustainability and for shared value. Shared value is really to be at the same page. If you're an oil company, CNOOC and Total, and you're doing and other contractors in the tier one, and you're doing what you're doing to produce, and you're investing, and the estimate is around 15 billion, we need to coexist. We need to coexist with these companies by working with them, by helping them out. But at the end of the day, we're trying to learn. Now, the value retention is through the goods and services, but also the transfer of skill to local people. And that's the space we play. But without forgetting and looking at what government has already taken, we have the capital gains tax. And I don't know if you're familiar with that, the discussion before, between the Heritage and Talo case, and even the capital gains tax from the recent Talo sale to Total and CNOOC. Now, government of Uganda has already earned over $500 million from the capital gains tax. Now, the key elements that maybe Ugandans may need to appreciate today is that the capital gains tax earning that government of Uganda has earned at the start of the sector, before we even develop, is a new phenomenon in the oil and gas business. Not many countries have earned capital gains tax at the start of their oil and gas, even before they develop. Later on, not many countries have had a level of local content participation that we are involved in, that we are discussing today in other countries. We can give good examples of countries like Nigeria, countries like Libya, countries like even China itself. It took them not a minimum of 15, 20 years for them to understand, for them to come in and participate. And of course, that originates from the bargaining chip. The bargaining chip from the concept that when oil companies come in, they invest in. The 15 billion we're talking about is money that CNOOC and Total largely are going to invest in to develop the sector in anticipation, not in anticipation, but to regain it or to get a payback after oil has started running. Now, that chip of I'm bringing 15 billion and investing it to produce oil that you're going to benefit this much, the oil companies usually have a bigger bargaining power. Now, for us to have been able to have laws and regulations as a government to chip in the local content participation and give us a very unique platform that we are having right now is quite unique in the nature and sense of oil and gas engagement.
So one would say we are quite doing very well
Extremely.
as a country when it comes to that is the concept of national or government take in oil. Now, where does you're a local contractor into this?
Yes.
That is your company, Rohi. Let's understand what exactly do you do in this chain, because the aim is to let Ugandans know that actually we have opportunity here. Because most of the times when you talk about the oil sector, you find that the locals tend to think that they can only benefit either from the oil or the revenue accrued, but they don't see opportunities. And sometimes when you go to some of these wells, these sites, you may hardly understand that actually there are benefits to the locals in or you stand to have an opportunity. So where do you get in?
Okay, maybe we should give Robert a background to who we are as Rohi. Rohi is a local oil and gas contractor. We actually regard ourselves as an EPC contractor, a local or national content EPC contractor. EPC means engineering, procurement, and construction, commonly known as design and build in our normal usual
Technical language.
Technical language. Engineering, procurement, and construction is that you develop a concept, you procure and supply for that concept after you have engineered it and install or construct. So that design and build 360-degree responsibility and delivery of the job is EPC in oil and gas. But also maybe for Ugandans to know that we are ISO certified. So ISO certification is international accreditation for management system, for international management system. So we are ISO certified for quality management, for environment management, and for occupational health and safety management, which means we have a card or a chip that approves us to participate as an international company, or at least in international accredited projects, which have a lot of visibility and sensitivity as a local entity. Now, this is an accreditation that you get with experience, execution of work, philosophy, and mode of operation. So you apply, of course, and get audits and so on and so forth. So that advantage of being ISO certified, to be able to play at the same level with international companies, gave us an advantage of where we are. In terms of what we are doing, oil and gas is spread through a value chain. As we were chatting outside, there have been so many events happening, FID, SPADing, these ministers, PSs coming and leaving and things like that, all geared to oil and gas. Now what that means is at every stage of engagement, and maybe what Ugandans need to know as well, is that there have been many oil and gas engagements and local content happening along the way for many years, for more than 10 years now, in early works, in environmental studies and other engineering studies, RAPS, resettlement action plan, resettlement of people and so on. All those are oil and gas associated projects. Now, but what we are doing now, and what really brings us to this platform as a local contractor, is that we are participating in a journey that is moving us towards the realization of actual oil, which is the development stage. And that journey is as short as 5 years and as intense as many elements within the 5 years, accounting up to 15 billion. So the execution is spread in a value chain where you begin with early works and enabling infrastructure. In other words, you have to identify a place where people have been displaced and resettled somewhere. You have to clear it and clean it for usage. You have to grab it and compact it. You have to get it ready for the access roads, for camps, for people who will be doing the development and the drilling and so on. And all those are the enabling and early works that we are participating in now. Now, and it is quite early, and I do not want us to really look at us as champions in the game and so on. It's just that we just participating and giving contribution, the little contribution, as we follow the value chain. But what is important, Robert, for Ugandans to appreciate is the window and platform and that we've used to get where we are, or to penetrate and give give a contribution. So we've got ring-fenced services in the law. So there are a couple of ring-fenced services that are dedicated for national companies. And those services are services that are within the major projects. And if you are aware, Robert, the oil and gas projects are awarded in a bundled form. The bundling of projects means that there are many projects within one basket and awarded to a contractor as one contract. But within that basket, yes.
Well, that is a bit interesting.
Very interesting. But within that basket of, say, a 1 billion, a 500 million contract, there are different elements of ring-fenced services in the law and in the regulations, that those services are supposed to be given out to local contractors. So the role of local participation in the view of shared value shared value meaning that we're in this together. And value retention. Value retention meaning that what is it that we have here that can be optimized in terms of personnel resource, goods and services. Now, we go and look out for those portions, and those portions are supposed to be given. So whoever is ready, marinated and ready to participate in such a project has an opportunity. And that's the beauty with this local content participation that we're talking about. It is provided for in the law. It has a strong and strict regulation. It has a strict regulator, PAU, and any Ugandan, you know, irrespective of the political divide and the ethnic divide and so on, you have an opportunity to participate. So that is where we are participating, Robert, and maybe to also give it more light, and maybe to assure Ugandans of the journey is that we've come a long way as a company. We've been in this oil and gas participation and as a contractor at early stages of the project, within the normal services, because the services are just getting intense. The services are just getting more technical now. But before then, the people who are doing exploration, the people who were doing camps for early works and so on, needed to eat, needed camps, needed transport, needed lifting services and so on. And it is a bit unfair for us to forget the people who participated at the start up to where we are now. And maybe the discussion and the subject of how then do they jump to join into this very important segment of the sector is another platform, or maybe something we need to look at as a country.
Now, that's well explained. I know there are a number of would-be local contractors.
Yes.
But how do they penetrate? Because one would say opportunity comes to those that are prepared. But from the time we had of now beginning some work in these various oil fields, we've had people long actually to get from this benefit from these contracts. Like you say, that they're bundled, but amongst the various projects in there, there is what is ring fenced. And I think to me, that is one of the things I want to credit our government and those that did the negotiations, that we would have formally tried to compete with maybe international companies. They have the experience, but where now we have that these specific works are for local people, because when we talk about local content, we are referring to that which is done by our local people, not the foreigners. But how do they penetrate? There are a number that try to penetrate and maybe they don't have things right. How do we ensure that it's not only RIHO, which we believe is doing tremendous work, right from the genesis of this, but also other contractors?
Good. It's a very good discussion. How do other contractors participate? Robert, you may need to know that there are actually a couple of local contractors participating. Quite many in diverse sectors and of the oil and gas within the sector. But what the Ugandans need to look at is, first of all, is the understanding. The president the other day on the Spading event mentioned of Octomera. October, and explained it as falling on two issues of Africa. But what can easily be related with what we are doing now is the deep understanding and appreciation of the scope and mode of engagement. To begin with, the participation, to bring it down into the business spectrum, is actually business involvement and delivery. That there should be a gap which translates into an opportunity, and there should be a mode of operation to deliver on this and get this opportunity within the business spectrum. So what Ugandans have got to do, and the rest of the Ugandans who are not in the sector, is really to understand the sector, understand what are those ring-fence services that can be taken up by local companies, understand the modality of penetrating the big contracts that are bundled, and be able to have an opportunity. But to bring it even closer, it is the bundling. When a project is bundled, $500 million project bundled in one basket, what this main contractor requires of us local companies is actually to follow them. Because whatever they give you falls within that 1 billion basket, and it cannot wait for different local companies within this basket playing as local contractors to do wrong or right if they can't meet the requirements of the project. So the issues of schedule, when and what are you doing and what does it tie on, is very key. Now, there's a testing process. Even when we have bundled projects and an opportunity for ring-fenced services to be cut off and given to us, we still go through the vigorous tender process and tender evaluation, where they test the technical ability, the commercial ability, the availability of resources, and so on. So the exhibition of readiness, and insulated with the philosophy that you understand that this sector has a schedule and has timelines. That's this sector, when the project begins, the money is in the basket, because usually oil and gas projects do not run without the cash being available. What then do you require? You require to execute, relieve yourself of some cash, to continue executing as that portion of work you're doing leads to another element within that scope of work. So Ugandans have got to understand, Ugandans have got to learn to see the window of opportunity within their different areas of engagement. Because oil and gas has 3 rings. The first ring is the direct service, where we are participating. You go down, they give you a portion, you mobilize, you put a camp, the rigging, the EPC projects, the construction, and so on. But the other segment is the indirect service, that when I'm down there doing what I'm doing, I need fuel, I need water, I need transport, I need logistics to get the goods down there, I need tools and all that. So those are indirect services, meaning that if you're a Ugandan with the resource that is needed for the implementation of the direct services, you still have a gap. Okay. All you then need to do is proximity and understanding that you have the relevant paperwork to be able to transfer and give what you have and fit into this chain. The other third layer is the induced service. That if I am from Hoima or any places around that can accommodate people working in the oil and gas sector, because we're going to have over 15,000 people working in the direct services between now, I think, in the next 2 years. But these 15,000 in direct, we have 35,000 indirect, and around 100,000 Ugandans participating in the induced. Once they get money, need the holidays within the country, so they need to go to lodges and rest. When they're off-site, they need to move, they need to eat, and basically even eat well, because I mean, once the economic standard improves and so on. So all those are opportunities. So it depends on the level of appetite, on the understanding of the business, on the gap analyzed and assessed, and the resources available to be able to deploy. The other thing, Robert, that is a bit critical for these oil and gas national content participation, the discussion we're having today, is that the information and the amount of information we give cannot easily jumpstart someone to go and get into the business. You've got to have mobilized, prepared something, have some level of resource that can be deployed for that particular gap identified to be able to be called a local content participant.
Well, the process is really tight. I think just to ensure that, one, there isn't wasting of funds. Like you said, projects here, the money is allocated. If it's for this particular, it's this amount of $1 billion, it has to be that. Now, recently we saw the spreading of Kingfisher wells and the awarding of the ECOP license. Now, what does this mean to this sector? And more so, what should the Ugandans expect? It was a moment of excitement. Some thought now drilling has started maybe in the few weeks. Others, it was really very interesting. Only when to be told that, well, this was padding off and you have still to wait a little bit longer.
True. So what's padding and the ECOP activities generally mean, Robert, in the general spectrum of the sector and the discussion we are having? Maybe we can look at it in 3 simple layers. The first one is that the general public information. Many people have been, asking me and have this myth of siphoning of oil. They keep saying, oh, we are told that there are trucks moving at night, moving oil from Hoima and wherever it is to sell it somewhere. So the spudding actually confirms to the general public, and especially to those that have been asking me about this siphoning of oil, that actually siphoning of oil is not possible. It's extremely hard. And that the spudding is the production, the testing of an oil rig to check and see that oil actually, one, exists and can come out. And that activity and what gave the significance of the spudding activity is what is embedded, invested to have it happen. A rig which came in more than 200 truckloads of 40-foot containers. That is how much equipment you need. Specialized rig, horizontal drilling, and so on. And all assembled, which is called rig up, and operated to produce that first oil. That first oil is not the first oil we're waiting in 2015. The 2015 one is the first harvest of oil, which is the first harvest for commercialization. But this one is the testing. So what that gives, one, the first layer of discussion, like I mentioned, is the public should know that our oil is still safe. The tap was turned on and it came, and now it is turned down until the entire infrastructure is built. But the second thing is that actually it feeds into our national target for first oil. That if the oil is ready now to start flowing, what else then are we waiting for to get first oil? Why shouldn't we have first oil now? Now, and that leads us to the third item, which is the assembly of the infrastructure that will enable to commercialize the oil that was spudded, which is now the other infrastructure, the CPF, Central Processing Facility, the feeder lane, the lane that the pipeline that feeds the Central Processing Facility, oil from the wellhead where the spudding was. We need the ECOP pipeline for it to go, East African pipeline for it to go to the ocean for commercial transportation. But we also need the pipeline to deliver this oil to the refinery. And that's the Ugandan project that we need a refinery. So all these different projects are the projects that feed into the basket of 15 billion, but we are sure that now we at least have the feedstock, because the engine for the operationalization of these other projects is the existence of oil, which for which the spudding represented. The ECOP license actually ties into the same discussion, that now that we have oil, the tap has been turned on and it can flow. We need a pipeline, as simple as that. So the pipeline is a midstream project that will be transporting this oil from the different facilities of upstream facilities to the ocean. So the ECOP license ties into the spudding, that we need the ECOP to transport the oil. But in terms of local content, and bringing this discussion to the gist of our engagement today, is that then when all these projects are operating, feeding or coming from the spudding activity, we still have a share of local content, which comes from the ring-fenced services. But it has even moved that for some from some companies or low companies, they have a chance to participate in other services that are not ring-fenced, by virtue of presence and availability of resources and capacity to understand the philosophy and mode of operation and execution of oil and gas projects. So in simple terms, or maybe difficult terms, I don't know, that's what it
At
means.
least I would say you've tried to simplify these to our ordinary person who is interested in the oil and gas sector. Me, one of the things that really I cherish so much here is the fact that our government ensure that we have proper legal documentation to guard the interests of Ugandans.
Very much.
Yes, sometimes when we hear about the cost sharing, like where we began from, sometimes we hear this company has this, then this has this, Uganda has this, but people forget the huge investments that these companies have to put in the oil and gas sector. I want to tell you, from the time I went to the oil wells, there's so much that I don't think there could be very few African governments that can, if there is any, that has ever handled.
Prepare this much and get it.
And get it.
Very few.
Very few.
Yeah, very
few.
Did.
Because you need a lot of money that can even drain your coffers if you're to go to work alone. And also that experts and everything, because one of the things I'm also interested here is that we believe as a country, I want to use the word we believe as a country, that after some time, Riho Limited will be able to do more works than we are now having international companies do. That is not only going to be there, that of course they are contributing, they are earning, and they are creating employment, but also there is learning.
Yes, that's the transfer of skill discussion.
Transfer of skills, and I hope this is something that you, the local contractors, are taking as very, very serious. That we can reach a time when we know that, yes, when these people finally phase out, we've built capacity
to be able to take over.
To be able to take over and push forward what is ours. Now, I will go for a very short break, and when I return, we'll still be discussing more regarding oil and gas and national tech, because we want to see that whatever opportunity is there for you as a local company, we take of that. We know that those that are ring-fenced, and that is very good, but there are also those where international companies can subcontract. So there's so much opportunity there for you. Though Job has said, well, you must also be apt to the game to be able to get some of these. We'll return shortly.
Frantz Fanon said, "Each generation must, out of relative obscurity, discover its mission, fulfill it, or betray it." I know a man who, in fulfilling his life's mission, has raised the foundations of many generations.
With Kampala captured and the leader of the National Resistance Army, Yoweri Museveni, now president, their task is to move forward until they make contact with the UNLA troops.
Do you see the NRA aligned to either the East or the West in particular?
No, we are aligned with Uganda and with Africa. This assumption of Western countries or some Western countries that we must either be for the East or for the West is actually racist, to say the least, because we have got our own interests, and these are the ones we are pushing. And if we have got allies, those who agree with us, as far as our interests are concerned, then they are our friends.
Of the day on UBC. Was brought to you by
Gatawo with MTN Momo Advance. Momo Advance tops up your Momo to complete your transactions. Dial *165*5*3# to apply. MTN Momo Advance is always available when you need it.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda Extra.
Welcome back from that break. Thank you for keeping it with us here on UBC TV. It is Good Morning Uganda Extra, an extension of Good Morning Uganda. I'm Robert Chirabo Nyonyintono with my guest, that is Job, who happens to be the managing director of Rohi Investment, which is a company that deals in oil and gas. It is one of the local contractors among the many that are dealing in this sector. And we're trying to look at the concept of national or government tech in the oil and gas sector, and more so that refers to local content. But one of the things I find very important that we must let our public know, Job, that is the fact that many are thinking at waiting when our first oil, that's the term we are using, and it's estimated, if all goes well, by 2025, we expect to have that. But many Ugandans are not bothered with the opportunities we have. Now we talk about the 4 billion, the
15 billion.
The 15 billion. Then we have the 4, that is almost 10% of our GDP, yes, that is going to be invested, and therefore Ugandans to spend even before the oil comes. So I feel it is more important to let people know about that.
Okay, about those numbers you've given, Robert, just to streamline them within the grand discussion we're having today, is that the 15 billion is the development cost. The money oil companies are investing in developing and getting the facilities ready to have our oil commercialized. So at first oil, around 15 billion shall have been spent. Now, of that 15 billion, we have an estimated 30% local content. And this is the local content that is provided for in the ring-fenced services, like I've already mentioned. So the numbers, and just to give perspective to those numbers, is that of the 15 billion, which is around roughly 37% of the $42 billion GDP. We have 30%, which is around 4.5 billion. Now, 4.5 billion local content participation is around 10% of our current GDP.
Yes.
So what we are saying, and the definition and the instance, the importance of this local content is the value retention, the shared value, the sustainability, local services, local goods and services, transfer of skills for local Ugandans and so on. So we are talking about a concentrated 4.5 billion, 10% GDP rotating around us. I am building an oil and gas facility, you're transporting for me, he's cooking for me, you're accommodating for me. Now, all that 4 billion is a value that Ugandans are receiving, are exchanging, are having right now, and that feeds directly within our economy and the national GDP. Now, way before the oil comes out of the ground. In fact, in terms of local content participation and sustainable development, sustainable engagement, the few who will be participating and who will attempt to get even to the more sensitive sections of the oil and gas will have a place to play. Because then, after the facilities are up, you only have to operate. You only have to maintain.
So it is now.
It is now, in terms of the local content participation and what the local Ugandan can get is right now. The philosophy, the entry point, and so on is subject that you may need to invite more Ugandans here for a couple of months to get that sink into people's ear. But there is so much opportunity in the grand scheme of things, and in terms of numbers and throwing out numbers, around 4.5 billion to be retained or to be involved within the local contractors.
And that's real serious money. When I look at 10% of our GDP, the 4.5 billion, well, it is something that should make a Ugandan find out how best then do I engage in this.
Yes.
But well, time is not so much on our side, but as we conclude, I must say, Riho Company, you've been around for some time in the oil and gas sector.
Yes.
The first time I visited there, I made a joke. I'm like, but it seems the clearing and all this stomaching maybe is what Africans are going to be doing. And I was seeing some of your boys down there. So I believe maybe later on the white man is going to come and the expatriates. But I didn't know that you guys are going to push through till here.
Thank you, Robert.
I thought your initial purpose was
to clear and clean.
I wanted to say to clear and clear and clear, but that is where I thought you guys planting grass, that initial work, leveling ground. But I'm happy that you've said all this far.
Thank you.
Now, this brings me to ask, what have been your major foundations for this success?
Well, Robert, when you say major foundation of this success on a national TV, people will attribute and accord a lot of success to Roy and myself as the lead of Roy. I must say that I am not a champion in this oil and gas, and my attributes that I may share, maybe 3, are generic attributes that any oil and gas local participant might have looked at or is looking at. One is really the uniqueness of our law. The local content, legal and regulatory provision is our first attribute as local contractors. And I will speak on behalf of many local contractors that we have a provision which is unique in oil and gas that gives us a place to play at the very early stage, at the development stage of an oil and gas sector. Extremely unique. This provision has further been followed by a very competent regulator, PAU. As I speak now, we have PAU representatives visiting our project sites and looking at how we engage with the people we work with in terms of our personnel and staff, the welfare of our personnel, the licensing and permitting and so on. That shows a very critical and participatory engagement of a regulator in a sector like this at a very early stage. That's the first attribute, regulatory and legal framework, which has given us the insulation and the foundation of what we are doing. But the second element, Robert, is the general business best practice. That you need to identify a gap, you need to be ready for it in terms of deployment of resources, you need to deploy those resources in a right way in terms of getting the result of what you're looking out of the business, and execute a business. So the general business practices, which I may not be qualified to share, with the many very successful Ugandans, is that you know, the partnerships, the quality of partnerships, the ethical background, the general best standing a Ugandan can have to participate as a business person, as an entrepreneur in oil and gas. The third one, I think for me, is the most important, and which really keeps me awake at night, which I call the brutality of history. You know, history is extremely brutal. And history very soon, 30 years from now, will come back to me or would go to any job out there and say, where were you when Robert Chirabo was preventing an oil spill by participating in waste management? And we are lucky that we have a local company, the Lowero Industries, participating in hazardous waste treatment. Yes,
they are doing so much to have the best.
Where were you when Chirabo was participating and now operating a portion of the refinery 30 years from now? And these are our grandchildren. Where were you? Now, that for me, the brutality of history, which can very easily be related with what you know, we ask some of our parents now, when you were in the same hall with Chirabo in the 80s, and Chirabo left you and went to the bush, where were you? What, in fact, did you do that evening? Did you go under the bed? So that brutality of history is, for me, what actually keeps me awake. That we have a natural resource, we have an enabling legal and regulatory framework, we have an opportunity that we can participate, and all of us an equal opportunity, irrespective of where you come from, irrespective of the political side you support. And then all you need is to wake up, have the tenacity, have, first of all, the humility to understand what is required to do, and then have the tenacity to move and work, move and do something, and then try to dodge as much as possible the brutality of history, like I call it. Thank you very much.
A very interesting man here that I've hosted this morning. Well, that is it for you regarding oil and gas national content. There are opportunities there for us, for local contractors, and some are even ring-fenced. What are you doing to take advantage of this? But of course, like he said, you must be prepared. I always enjoy telling people that when it comes to those who are prepared. So also very important to note is we are not only waiting for the final oil, the first oil, come 2025, all remaining constant as assumed. But there are opportunities right now. When I saw those, were they 28? The trucks that were transporting these, about 200, very many trucks.
Yes, the rig.
The rig.
Yes, yes. And it's a local company that was transporting.
And that's what I was going to say. Although, one interesting thing, why should I say this on TV? Joe,
I can see you getting excited.
You know, when I move on our streets, I see a lot of lorries. And I thought we had so many
lorries.
But just that companies had to bring resources.
Yes. The quality of those lorries is what matters.
People, you couldn't have a single person provide all those trucks.
Yeah, but again, that really it's the responsibility, because it's not only just deployment. It is to ensure that your lorry or truck, as you've termed it, can transport in a safe manner, deliver what is transporting on time, and offload it. So there are other resources that actually, you know,
then also let me tell you another part that beat my understanding. You see, you always have people who have experience in driving. They weren't taking any ordinary driver that you've been transporting. Man, you are defensive driving. There are so many standards that were required for the drivers that were going to just drive those those not even human beings, but get them to the oil field. So that was
some of the
technical requirements. I was happy that was a local company, though I laughed the fact that we didn't have one single company locally that could handle that task. But they had to amalgamate forces here and there, then have those trucks and transport them. Well, let me just wish you a lovely day. Happy Valentine's to all the lovers, to all people in relationships. If you believe in this, well, make it special of a person that you really love. If you don't, life continues. You know, this is a day, it's not a birthday, it's something that came in Uganda not so long ago, though it was there, and now we celebrate it, and some people don't lose sleep because of Valentine. Don't have a bad day because of Valentine. It will come and it is going to go, and tomorrow is going to be another day.
You sound a bit pessimistic from suddenly.
You see, there are people at this day, you know, makes life very complicated for them. A man is hunting for money to get this banquet of flowers, put money, cakes, and all that. I think, well, you shouldn't lose.
I think, Robert, for the purpose of the importance of the day, you need to let, lovers enjoy themselves. Because you really sound like you're talking from a personal perspective about this subject. That's why I put on...
Oh, I hadn't seen...
I know it was red, but on closer look, I think it's a different color. It could be maroon. But
so your
but
better
at
half
least
should expect this. Sipa, now I saw some. Are you gifting a Range Rover?
I'm not in politics side. This is associated with politics.
Well, let's have a lovely day. See you tomorrow, God willing.